Thank you, Manisha, for having me here. I think conversations with you off, this platform also, or have always been interesting, and the kind of work that you do and care. I think a lot to learn from you as well. Conversations like this are important. I think it's important that you talk about disability, you talk about its intersectionality. To start with, I work with NCPEDP. I'm the executive director. NCPEDP is India's only organization which is based on a hardcore research based advocacy around people with disabilities rights and inclusion. We are 28 years old. I have been heading NCPEDP from last 5.5 years. Prior to NCPEDP, I was to work with another organization by the name Shishu Sarati, which is also into disability, and I worked with Shishu Sarati for 9 years as their ED. My predecessor, late Sri Javed Abidi's untimely demise made me move to Delhi, and there it is. I think I had to get onto a responsibility, a huge shoe to fill in. I am a person with disability myself, and I use a wheelchair. I have a cerebral palsy. All my work that I do, I think somewhere I think it is very personal and it's also political.
Being a person with disability, I know the kind of challenges you would have had growing up, right? But what was your pointed cause or reason that got you started as a ability activist?
On an everyday basis you face a lot of discrimination because of the systemic barriers that we have. I still face a lot of discrimination. I say, despite the fact that who I am and I'm able to articulate my thoughts as a teenager, constantly looking for thinking on all, not looking would not be the right word, thinking that I will be cured one day, maybe a surgery somewhere or some magic somewhere. And also, how your parents are, and how they they also try to take you to the best of facilities, doctors. I dropped out of school. I dropped out of school at a very early age, twice in fact. Once when I was enrolled in kind of the early kindergarten. We used to say nursery, the nursery grade. School principal asked my father to withdraw from the school because I was not able to use the toilet on myself, because it had a flight of stairs to reach out to, and they didn't have any support staff. And then again, when I was in seventh standard, I dropped out of school uh, because I had a surgery and I couldn't go to school. When I went to school, my principal told me, you cannot continue, and so on. All that's left an impact on me, and then I thought there's some issue with me because I am not able to walk like anybody else. Father was somebody who always believed in me and made me feel that I am good enough for the whole world. And I started to work with the father at a very young age. With the work that I was doing with the family business, I was recognized as one of the best self employed youth with disability. Back in 1998, I was about 17, 18 years old, and I was recommended by government to Assam, and that national award was given to me by then Prime Minister Sri Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji. And in that award ceremony, I met a lot of disabled people. They came from across the country with different kind of disability. All of them are contributing in a different way. There was somebody who was a teacher and working with various government organizations and so on, who were the fellow awardees. And then when I came back home, I was invited to Shishu Saruthi, the organization which I headed later on, and I went to visit. I saw, and Shishu Saruthi primarily works with children with developmental disability. And then I figured that, okay, this is also a part of the diversity that we have in our. I came in touch with NCPEDP. I met Javed Abedi at that time, and started understanding rights of people with disability. And we had
Hmm.
this the first legislation, the 1995 Act, which talked about certain entitlements and rights in terms of accessibility. I remember that in early 2000, I think early 2002 3, I think so. There was a park in Guwahati city which was being renovated, and it struck me that if it is being renovated with this kind of money,
Hmm.
it might as well be accessible for disabled people. And that's when I
Absolutely.
wrote to the concerned authorities, and they were not very welcoming with my letter and didn't want to meet me. And that's when I think it started. And I took them on. I wrote the newspaper and it published in the news, and
And that is what is so admirable about you, because you have now taken this on not just as your own challenge, but about a section of the society that needs that voice, right, and needs that representation.
Disabled people face a lot of problem, and that makes them strong. I don't know if they make them. I think they don't have a choice. It's about a survival, if I can put it like that. It's you don't rise, you survive. But people with disability are never part of any drawing board. They're never part of um, any discourse which is around the majority of people of the world. When I say majority of the people of the world, are the so-called non-disabled people. The basic fundamentals which everybody takes for granted, things like education, things like moving from one place to another, trying to participate in a labor market. I mean, jobs are one thing, but you could be participating from on a daily wage honor to
Absolutely.
anything else. The ability to interact with people around you, the ability to have a family where you have dignity, you have
Hmm.
equity, and all these basic things which everybody takes for granted is
Hmm.
something which people with disability have to fight for. There's such acute lack of awareness about the disability, particularly in a country like India. I will say India, and global South as well. Always looked at as an afterthought, being an subject of charity and welfare. India being a welfare state, which is also okay. How can you ignore people with disability who are your citizens? The US has 29% of their population who are disabled people.
Exactly.
Now, their
Hmm.
definition of disability is wide, not like
Hmm.
our medical model. Yes, and I've repeated it maybe 1,000 times in last couple of years, that India being the most populous country in the world, it doesn't need you to be a rocket scientist to understand that it will also have the highest population of persons with disabilities.
Absolutely.
Even if you look at WHO, it says 16%. So if I don't say 16, even if I say conservatively 7 to 8% of the Indian population uh, are people with disability, it is no less than 10 crores. I mean, 100
Absolutely.
million politics. When you say majoritarian politics, because everything is designed around people who can see, who can walk, can hear, who can speak,
Exactly.
you know everything is designed around them. So my argument is that if you look at disability, it's straight away put into a charity basket, into a welfare basket.
Hmm.
And my argument is that people with disability are not the only community or the only section of society in India, or only not only the only marginalized group which is getting welfare schemes. If you look at elderly, if you look at
Hmm.
farmers, if you look at people from scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, if you look at
Exactly.
women, we look at widow, we look at trans people, you look at people
Hmm.
who are from tribal community, you look at people who are war disabled,
Hmm.
uh, refugees, and so on. And all these people are getting pensions, they're
Concessions,
getting
etc. Hmm.
concessions, they're
Hmm.
getting reservations. On the other side, they're also able to participate in the mainstream society. They're able to participate in other
Hmm.
avenues of life. They have a choice of getting into a private job, doing a business, getting into
Hmm.
government employment. They participate in that. They compete, they write exams, whatever is the process.
Right.
When it comes to people with disability, it doesn't move beyond the pension.
Coming to your present, tell us a little more about the manifesto, where you're going with it. How did you feel uh, this would be a game changer for India's future?
I've been traveling across the country. I've met people across, I think, at least 10 consultations across the country, both in urban and rural space. I have done talking to people with all kinds of disability from all strata of life, different genders. Been very particular that we have a cross disability approach while making this manifesto, and also while trying to disseminate information about it and trying to create a little more awareness. It's unfortunate that people with disability fail to understand that disability is a political issue. Because if I am not able to get out of my house on a wheelchair, go to the bus stop, get into a bus, reach
Or
my
a train
office,
or
yeah, or a
hmm,
train, or even
hmm.
a taxi which I'm paying for,
Right,
even if it's a private taxi, it's not
right.
easy.
Everyone who is so-called disabled, unable to move around because of the challenges of their environment, eventually becomes a burden. And I'm happy to say this, but they, eventually become a burden on people around them. Passing on that invisible disability to their family.
I have been in the sector for the last 20 years. Started as a volunteering and weekend to weekend, and I didn't realize when I sucked into this full time. Remember that first 10 years, the only struggle with people with disability, their parents and NGOs and disabled people's organization was to get an identity card. There used to be workshops and
Yeah.
seminars to talk about how to get an identity card. This is like the previous law, the Persons with Disability Act 1995. And then you try to talk to the social welfare department. Their forms are not available, and there is to be have a camp. And if there's a camp, then there is no psychiatrist. If there's a psychiatrist, there's no eye doctor. There's no ophthalmologist, or it's that drama of get if a person with disability to prove that yes, I have a disability, and you give me that certificate. Then you have to prove that despite this disability, which I have to prove that I have a disability first, that if I apply for a job or if I apply for an admission in an education institution, I will be able to discharge my duty as an employee, or
Hmm.
be a take participate in the education system on an equal basis with others despite my disability. That's the irony of people with disability in India. You become an inspiration upon, you call specially able, differently abled, somebody's once used exceptionally able. The stereotypes around disabilities is killing people, I tell you. You look at para athletes. How many advertisement have you seen with para athletes in them? How many endorsement are they doing? There's no policy in our country, minus barring one or two states, and now the present go- government has recognized some of them. These are my questions, which I say, why to inspire other people, and what do you
Right.
get in return? If I want to apply for a job in a
Hmm.
corporate, they see the device first, then the person before the person.
Absolutely.
Realization with the team's interaction, and also the National Disability Network, and people like you. And I keep traveling so much across the country. Then I realized that it cannot solve the problems of people with disabilities with a welfare and a charity approach. To talk about welfare, government of India is giving ration to 80 crores households.
Hmm.
The farmers are getting pension. They have a budget of 70,000 crore, particularly vulnerable tribal group. It was announced about a month and a half back or 2 months back. The total budget of that scheme is 24,000 crore. And these things are important. I think it's important, and the farmers or elderly or the tribal group, they all need support. But if you look at disability sector, our department, which gets only 1,200 crores, which is 0.005% of the total budget. How do you establish disability as a mainstream issue without any resources? So have you seen one awareness campaign in last 75, 80, or 100 years? I'm talking about a lifespan approach about a
Yeah.
person who has
Holistic.
disability.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, you just can't put a person on a wheelchair when there is elections. That I'm also going to vote, my right.
Right.
When you do education for all, you can't put one child on a wheelchair and push to the classroom. I mean, that's not the way. I think there has to
Absolutely.
be, hardcore discussions around disability. People with disability must have a seat on the table. I recently, at part of my travel around election meetings, I went to this meeting of Parivar, the Confederation Organization of Parents in India, more
Right.
than 300 organizations. So much of stress they have, about the children who have developmental and intellectual disability, trying to organize themselves that who will take care of their children after they are no more.
Absolutely. Who after me? Yes. Hmm.
Yes, 2 day, 1 day meeting, they just they talk about how to create a trust, how do you save money, do extra work harder, it is for your children. Why not any policy for such people? Why
Exactly.
not any policy from government of India? You know, you don't get an insurance. Even if you want to pay for an insurance, premium, you don't get an insurance. I will not even open the Pandora box
Absolutely.
of people with rare disease. So when you have something like Ayushman Bharat, why don't we get something around that? So these are the few things which we thought, cannot be solved by people like us who are working in the sector. We will continue to only make noise, trying to create awareness, but until and
Absolutely.
unless then there is a political will, we will not be able to see disability into the mainstream.
You rightly said there are very few people who think disability is a political issue, right? And somewhere I think that is where the missing card in the pile is, because unless you make it a part of mainstream society, which has been my cry day in and day out, that we do not need the victim card, effect every time. We do not need the sympathy factor, every time. What we need is a place in the mainstream, and we will find our own solutions.
We need a seat on the table. This afterthought around disability is not going to help anymore. Disabled people themselves have to realize this. In India, um, you look at if you look at the data around disability, who who vote, the registered voters, there are
Right.
more than 97 lakh. I think it is around one more than one crore people with disability who are registered voters. There are 88 lakhs of people who are elderly over the age of 85. There are 2.5 lakh people who are registered voters over the age of 100. If you put all this together, if I say 2 crores voters with disability, because beyond 85 you do have some disability, uh, so that 2 crore plus if you put a caregiver with them, or two caregiver, so it makes you 4 crore. What makes the political party not reach out to this vote bank? Do you think this number doesn't have the power to make people win and lose election? People lose elections on very small numbers, 1,500, 5,000. My problem
Absolutely.
is when I see that there's no outreach, and the people with disability are only used to inspire other voters to come forward and vote during the election.
Hmm.
It's heartbreaking.
To ask you, Armanji, and this is, I don't know if it is pertinent right now, but you've been having discussions, right, with the
Yes.
delegations across the country. Do they
Yeah.
feel that there is a need for this? Do they feel that this was even absent in the
You know,
system, or was
so
it so
I
overlooked over time?
two very large parties have released their manifesto last 3 days. Both of them have not mentioned anything about disability. I've met them. No, I've met them. I met their, the party president um last week, one on one for half an hour. Very appreciative of the work and all that, and then they completely miss out on this.
May
And
this
this
is like, you see the elephant in the room and you refuse to recognize that there is something
exactly,
that
yeah.
needs to be
So yeah,
addressed, right?
and then there are parties who you meet. They say, "Oh, I think we must have already done it." And I said, "No, you have not. Your people have not been very receptive. You're trying to meet, and then at the last moment, it gets into the document. This time around, there is a little more cohesive
Approach.
effort. Um we've got into this. We've got the National Discipline Network all activated. It's been a year that we prepared for this election across the country. When you start talking about these things, like if I say that disability is a political problem, disability is a political issue, people don't understand it. Because with generations of disabled people being looked at as an object of charity, as a welfare, and something to pity upon, suddenly I'm telling that
Mm,
your vote is important and you can make people win and lose election. Let them
mm,
come and to you and ask to you to vote for them, and you ask a question in return, that what is that you will do for a person with disability when you win the election. Well, this is an eye opener. We never thought like that. This
mm.
happened to these people who I met in the Parivar meeting, where parents from all over the country with 300 organizations. They said,
Right.
no, talk to me like that. Why are we so apologetic about ourselves? And
Mm.
it's, just think about it, Manisha. Why do you not come to us for vote for persons with disability? 1 crore registered voter is 10% of the uh, disabled voters in the country. Why don't you mention disability in a manifesto in a more explicit way. Why only talk about pension? Why only talk about stuff which is anyway is being done for other marginalized group? I'm not able to participate into a mainstream society because of you don't create infrastructure which is disabled friendly, because you don't think of disabled people will come to a school, college, or a metro, or a bus, or a railway station, a bank, a
Hmm.
restaurant, anywhere.
Correct.
Will somebody uh, get a trade license if they don't have GST? Can they do business without GST? Will a
Hmm.
commercial space be given a permission to build or to operate without a fire safety um, license?
License. Hmm.
Yeah. So why is disability not part of compliance? Why is disability not looked at as an important section of the society? Young country, young people with disabilities. We don't ask this question now. One more generation of disabled people will just perish
Yes.
asking for this pension of 300 rupees, 500 rupees, 1000 rupees, 1500 rupees. At worst, best is 3000 rupees. In
Hmm.
Mizoram, you get 300 rupees per month as pension, and only 2000 people with disabilities are registered. You cannot register anybody new uh, until unless somebody who dies out of that list
Amazing.
of 2000 people. And 300 rupees, mind you, it is not $300, it is 300 rupees. What about the cost of disability?
Hmm.
What about cost of disability living in a country like India, which is highly inaccessible? Or even look at the global south countries.
Hmm.
Why am I not able to use public services or public transport? Why I'm not able to go to school? I'm not able to write NEET and other entrance exams for higher education, because all these centers are inaccessible. All this
Exactly.
which happens around. I mean, why there's no thinking? Why education, which is a fundamental right? What is the data on education that we have? Percentage of people with disability who reach higher education is 0.05%. The
Hmm.
national average of higher education of India is 27%. At least bring it up to that level. At least bring it to 20%.
To ask you a very tough question now. These are stats which are staring at the face, right? Since we are so many of us, and this is just a very naive question, okay? Please pardon me for asking this, but we are so many of us, right? We are so many of us who are affected in some way or the other. Don't we have the strength to form our own political party? The question erupts from the origin of disability activism in the US of A, right? The entire disability population in US, and they were, facing the same situation that we are facing in our country, for years together. They actually got together from, various backgrounds rather than operating and existing in silos, and got into, politics. They actually started a political activism representing their own needs.
People have been asking, and quite a few have asked that can we make a few people with disability contest elections?
Exactly.
Okay, I think the answer is a yes and a no. Now, you cannot contest an election just on the issue of disability. If you contest an election, you have to contest for the people, everybody. Problem with us as a disability sector that we don't participate into mainstream discourse. Thing is, like, if you look at other marginalized groups, if you look at the women don't look at disability as part of women with disability as their group. They say, okay, the disabled people group will take care of it. The
Hmm.
other, like the SC/ST group, or the tribal group, or anybody else, is not looking at disability as part of them. And we have also kept our cards very close to our chest. We say, you don't understand, it's type like that, don't call me disabled, call me differently abled. We say it ourselves.
Hmm.
I have very many people who are very closely associated with me are like that. So that rights must be fought for, and if you want to contest election, you should have the ability to win. Trying to come to that 10 demands that we have around
Hmm.
uh, disability in the manifesto. Everything has been thought through. We are not asking something frivolous which is not thought through. Process that we have approached on the disability manifesto is very unique. It is very participatory. Though we started to look at disability as part of elections, right, about almost a year back, We started with the Karnataka elections. We looked at the MCD elections in Delhi. We looked at you know the five state elections like in Rajasthan, in Telangana, in Chhattisgarh, in Madhya Pradesh, and Mizoram,
Hmm.
and we had held meetings where we had the political parties at the state level come, and you know disabled people made these demands to them, that these are the things that we want in your manifesto. And we saw some success. When we saw those success happening with the regional political parties or regional and Congress, BJP, these are the parties whom we interacted with, and they agreed to some of our demands. Like from Karnataka elections, they started putting some of our demands into their manifesto, and we we realized that this is working out, and it is not something that they are ignoring. It is worked out,
It's being
and
heard. It's being heard.
yeah,
Hmm.
it's been heard.
Right.
And that's when we started to have a webinar, on national webinar on disabled people in politics. More than 2,000 people participated in that. We had a Google form. We rolled it out for everybody. We've received more than 15,000 people from across the country, all disabilities, giving their feedback as to what should be there in this manifesto.
No.
To kind of reiterate the 10 demands that we have
Yes,
in the
please.
manifesto. First
Hmm.
and foremost, we're saying budgetary allocation. Currently, as I mentioned, the government gives a budgetary allocation of 0.1005% of the total budget. We are saying by the year 2029, till the next elections, bring up the budgetary allocation to 5%. We have said accessibility, and beyond a ramp and a website and an app, we are saying that accessibility should reach up to products and services. Any
Hmm.
service that I'm using, whether it is private or public in nature, we should have accessibility to that. We have talked about social security, and we are saying one nation, one pension. We are saying at least 5,000 rupees to all people with disability who deserve or make to the criteria of getting a monthly pension, and not 500 and 300 and 1,000 rupees. We've talked about social political inclusion, as I mentioned earlier. One, person with disability to be nominated in the Rajya Sabha by the
Perfect.
president. Yeah, and at all level of governance. We're talking about political participation in Lok Sabha, Gram Sabha, and at all level. Talking about economic participation of people with disability. We're talking about more investment around SMEs and MSMEs, where you look at getting more avenues around entrepreneurship, livelihood, self-employment, and so on. We talked about climate change. You see, climate change has a very adverse effect on people with disability, much more than
Absolutely.
the other non-disabled. So we've been very specifically talked about gender, women with disability to be get more priority in education and technology, and such use of technology like digital and so on, so that they are participate on an equal basis with the other non-disabled people. And last, we have mentioned about sports
Hmm.
infrastructure at all level should to be
Hmm.
made accessible. Don't struggle, and then you only when you make it, how will you get into an international circle? These are a broad 10 um, demands, Manisha, that we have made. I must tell you that these demands have been sent to us by more than 15,000 people from across the country, and
Hmm.
it is endorsed by more than 600 organizations. It has
Hmm.
got like National Association of the Blind, All India Confederation of the Blind, National Association of Thalassemia, Hemophilia, Association of People Affected by Leprosy, the National Spinal Injury Center, Help Edge
Absolutely.
India, which runs Confederation of Organizations for Elderly People, have endorsed it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or the National War Veteran Association,
Hmm.
Disabled War Veterans Association, they have endorsed this. So I think we have got endorsement from across the country, from large organizations, individual corporates, and these are 10 demands, and it has created a lot of ruckus. We have got media support. We have more than 60 coverage from across the country, digital, electronic, print, and it continues to come. It has
What you have initiated is not a one-man task. You know that, and this is something that is going to happen collectively. So, what is your ask from those around you, whether it is from the section of the society who are suffering with some form of disability or from the section of the society that doesn't have disability.
Started this campaign called uh, Mera Bhot, Mera Bharat,
Hmm.
where
Hmm.
we are asking people to use hashtag, put a purple or a blue ink here on the other side of the
Hmm.
finger, just to
Okay.
know that people with disability has is there, and they have a
Hmm.
different story to tell. They can also look up our website, our social media handles. So tag us, use the hashtag like Mera Bhot, Mera Bharat, and do ask questions about disability. When people come to ask vote for people, what do you think of people with disability? Will you These demands are there. This is available on our website. It is also available on our social media. So
Hmm.
ask questions to the political parties across. It doesn't really have to be Delhi. It doesn't really have to be the party president. Anybody who's a party worker at any level should be asked this question. We are running a helpline, to help people to know more about voting, whatever accessible features that Election Commission of India is being have rolled out. Running a contest. If I were the prime minister, what would I do for people with
They've
disability?
seen that as well. That's so
Yes.
interesting. I think this is how the whole involvement creation is happening, which is so brilliant.
It will be interesting, what ideas come from it, and then we can share with the whoever the prime minister is next time. We have a history with elections. It's my predecessor Javed Abedi who made this PIL in the Supreme Court. That's how accessible elections were done earlier. From
Hmm.
Supreme Court order to this mandatory law, which is now making elections accessible. Like, all electoral process has to be accessible. So we are
Hmm.
demanding, that it beyond the booth. And my meeting with the officials of Election Commission of India, I have told them it is not about Delhi, Bombay, Pune, or Jaipur, or Indore, or or Guwahati, where you show that the booths are accessible and disabled people are able to vote. It's
Hmm.
time to change that. It is time
Hmm.
that you take the focus rural and show that people with disability living in rural areas are also able to come and vote with dignity. This facility of postal ballot for people with disability. The first phase is already over. Some of people have already who have enrolled and filled the form 12D have used this facility already. The second phase enrollment is on, and then again phase wise there are notification dates are there. So if you are somebody who is not able to go to the polling booth to cast your vote, to use this facility. There is
Right.
transport facility being offered by the district election officer. There is remote voting that can happen. The voting machine can come home and so on. Must vote, and when you vote, just get visible. Talk about
Hmm.
it. Put it on social media. Go to the polling booth if you can. I think that's where the game is. I think.
And it is so commendable because, suddenly in the absence of everything, of any kind of information, any kind of program, now you see this surge, right? So this is a brilliant change. It's like a breath of fresh air for people like us. Absolutely. So Arman bhai, thank you so much. I think I don't want to stop this conversation because it's so interesting, but this is just a sea of a subject, right? And there's so much
Yeah,
of work to
I
be
know.
done. So we will have to keep on, I think, meeting up regularly and having these conversations. I can only wish all of us the best because I don't think it is any one person's agenda. It is for all of us that we need to do this. And it is each of our responsibility, all of us. And it is to make, I think, the country more
More inclusive.
breathable.
Just
Exactly.
from I think from cost to investment, that is what the country need to do. Disabled
Exactly.
people need investment, and they will
Hmm.
contribute to the GDP, to the economy, and we will be very
Absolutely.
soon 9 trillion or 15 trillion economy, not
Yeah,
5.
absolutely. And I'm also hoping that someday really soon a census is taken. We haven't had one,
Inshallah, yes.
census taken in a long, long time. I think that is where the data will be more transparent.
We are also preparing and geared for the census. We have done a lot of work around it.
Hmm,
Very important. Yes.
very important. So thank you so much and all the best.